What's up, guys? Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lanturn, bringing you guys our Week 3 Team Builder for MWPA Season 8 in the Earth Division, taking on KMJ and the Brooklyn Magnets. Their team consists of Tyranitar, Mimikyu, Toxtricity, Runerigus, Appleton, Unpheasant, Inteleon, Umbreon, Vileplume, Diggersby, and Torkoal. Priority users are the Mimikyu with Shadow Sneak, Inteleon with Sucker Punch, and Diggersby with Quick Attack. Hazard setting is the T-Tar with Rocks, Runerigus with Rocks and T-Spikes, Diggersby with Spikes, and Torkoal with Rocks. Removal options are the Unpheasant with Defog and the Torkoal with Rapid Spin. I'm not sure if either of those retained it or not in this generation. I'm going to go with Torkoal probably kept Rapid Spin, but I'm not sure about Unpheasant keeping Defog. And then 4 times weaknesses, Tyranitar to Fighting, Toxtricity to Ground, and Appleton to Ice. But with Thick Fat, Appleton to Ice is really only a 2 times weakness, so there's a lot to go around there. It is allowed to have hidden ability. Everything that is not a starter is allowed to have hidden ability. And Inteleon's really the only starter that doesn't appreciate having its hidden ability that much. I'm expecting everything but Umbreon and Vileplume to come here. I think Umbreon doesn't make a ton of sense against my team. It can wall a few things, but in general, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's kind of just setup fodder for Conk, and Conk has a pretty awesome matchup here, so I'm not entirely sure that they would want to bring Umbreon as a Conk, just free switch in for Conk, but beats me. Vileplume is a Pokemon that I actually can deal with very effectively with my team, so I don't think it's coming because of that. It's hard to tell with Vileplume because, again, it could be something that could check Conk in theory, but I think Runerigus does a better job of that. Speaking of Conk, it's the first time I'm bringing it, and it's the first time I'm bringing my only hazard removal on the team with Defog Conk. But Bulk Up, Drain Punch, Ice Punch, this is pretty much perfect coverage against this team in general. Drain Punch is pretty effective against most of the things here, and everything that would resist or be immune to Drain Punch is either weak to... Most of it's weak to Ice Punch, honestly, except for Toxtricity, which is neutral. And Mimikyu, which is also neutral. So Ice Punch is fine coverage for those. I'm Guts, just in case the Runerigus wants to burn me, or something wants to Toxic me, maybe Torkoal burn me, or Inteleon Scald burn me, or something. I think Guts is just the proper option here, rather than Iron Fist, because if I do get burned, then I'm even more of a threat, right? That's the whole idea. So Bulk Up plus Drain Punch, or sorry, Leftovers plus Drain Punch should be enough recovery, but I am fully specially defensive. This is still a really good Tyranitar switch in just because of my base defense. So I can probably just switch into the Tyranitar fairly freely, despite being fully Spadef. Aegislash is next. I'm running a specially defensive Aegislash as well. This is my Toxtricity answer, which doesn't normally exist, but I'm obviously immune to Boom Burst, and Overdrive will not do a whole ton because I'm pretty bulky. I don't have a ton of ways of actually hitting it back though, so I'm gonna rely on like taking the hit, Shadow Ball, and then King Shield, and then Shadow Ball again or something, or if it's chipped a little bit, then Shadow Ball into Shadow Sneak. Should be able to deal with it. I've got Sacred Sword for the fairly obvious Tyranitar that's going to come in on me, as well as Umbreon if it does decide to show up, and it's Curse, then I can deal with that. If it's Curse Appleton, then I can deal with that. Things of that nature. I think Conk is going to be the main switch in to most special attackers, like Inteleon and Appleton, I think are good targets for Conk to switch in on, especially because Appleton doesn't have Toxic, so he's more likely to, they're more likely to burn me with other things. And then Aegislash is primarily there for the Toxtricity, which would otherwise just decimate my roster. I'm bringing a physically defensive Arcanine, which is my Mimikyu check, as well as my Unpheasant check, and in theory, a Diggersby check. But that one is a little bit more sus, so we'll talk about that right now. I'm running Will-O-Wisp for the Diggersby and the Mimikyu. I'm Shooka to take an Earthquake. Diggersby doesn't have return anymore, so it's going to what an Earthquake be. And then I can burn it. If Torkoal comes, then I have the Sun. for boosted morning sun healing anyways, so I didn't feel the need to run Sunny Day this week. And instead of running Close Combat, I went with Play Rough. It's going to hit things a little bit weaker, like the Toxicity, but it'll hit the Appleton for super effective damage, where it would normally be taking resisted damage from Flare Blitz because of Thick Bat. So Play Rough is it's a little bit nicer than Close Combat here for Umbreon and Tyranitar, because I don't get the defense drops as well, so it means I can still take on Mimikyu after killing one of those or dealing with one of those. Sand is a little bit annoying because I'm not running Leftovers and I'm running Morning Sun, but we'll deal with that. Burning pretty much anything would be ideal. I don't have Toxic on this team because not a lot of stuff gets Toxic in this gen. And really the only thing that does is my Quillfish, so Umbreon is actually going to be really difficult to take down if I'm in a position where I kind of have to deal with that. So I'm pretty scared about the Umbreon, honestly, if it does come, and I'm really going to have to hold on to Conk if it does come to be able to kill it. So we'll sort of see how that goes. I'm running a little bit of speed on the Arcanine just in case something is speed creeping it, like Mimikyu maybe is speed creeping my Arcanine. I'm not sure if they would want to run just max speed Mimikyu to just speed creep Arcanine in general, or if they would outspeed like min speed Arcanine. I'm sort of creeping over that a little bit, but it's Tyranitar would have to be like jolly or timid near max speed to be able to outspeed me, and what else would even be getting up there? I mean, Diggersby, same sort of thing, although it can be adamant. I don't know. Excuse me, there's a few different options, but I'm not super worried about it. Flapple, I'm bringing a Citrus Berry Ripen set with Dragon Dance, Grab Apple, Dragon Rush, and Wing Attack. I want a Dragon Rush to be able to hit the Appleton, because I don't want to lock into Outrage against Mimikyu. And Wing Attack is there for Vileplume, primarily, I believe, is primarily there for Vileplume, because I will want to hit everything else with Grab Apple or Dragon Rush, I think. Yep. I think that's what it's for. I'm pretty sure Wing Attack is there for the Vileplume. I toyed around with Outrage and being a Hustle set. The thing with Hustle is that it doesn't boost Foul Play, so that's great. But locking into Outrage, Mimikyu is such a problem. I cannot be locked into Outrage this game, so I'm not doing that, and instead I'm going with this one. I've also considered Iron Defense Body Press with Grab Apple as well, which could take on Runerigus still fine, and could also take on the Umbreon fine. In fact, it took on the Umbreon better than what this will, because Umbreon's probably just going to two-shot me with Foul Play. But I'm hoping that Grab Apple will two-shot it, and Citrus Berry will pop at 50, and it will restore 50 because of Ripen. So, actually no, it'll pop at 75, won't it? Ripens berries and doubles their effect. It'll pop at 75. I don't want that anymore, do I? I definitely want to change this to a Guave. Because then it'll pop at... Normally it would pop at 33, but now it'll pop at 66, and it would heal me to full. So, Ripen's kind of interesting in how it works. Does this get recycle? I never really looked into... It does. Okay. So, maybe that's something I should look into on a bulkier set in the future. Or maybe I do change this to just be Iron Defense Body Press. I was having a lot of trouble deciding on what I wanted to do with the set, but I think actually Iron Defense Body Press with maybe Leech Seed is a little bit better all around. It's still bad against Appleton, so I still have to run Dragon Rush for that. Oh, Body Press is illegal. What? I thought I got it. Well, then. Okay, so we're just going to go back to what we were doing before. Oh my god. I definitely thought it got Body Press. So many things got Body Press this gen. This doesn't. Conk does. No, it doesn't? Oh my goodness. I don't even know what gets Body Press and what doesn't. You don't. Orbeetle does. I know Orbeetle does. Okay, anyways, Weavile's next. I'm running a Swords Dance set with X-Scissor, Ice Punch, and Throat Chop. This is pretty much what I'm running with like Conk, but bug coverage instead of fighting. Because bug is actually a little bit better than fighting here for Weavile. Why is that? Oh, because Chopple is super obvious. We found that out in our last game against Odin. He was running, we frisked the Choppleberry on something, Steelix, and I realized exactly how obvious it is that I would run fighting coverage with this team. There's a lot of stuff that gets fighting coverage and a lot of stuff that needs fighting coverage on this team. So instead, I'm going with bug coverage to hit the Tyranitar because this team doesn't have a Steel type. So there is not really a point in running fighting coverage on Weavile when I don't have to. And the bug coverage will deal with Umbreon and Tyranitar. Not quite as well on Tyranitar, but because it deals with both, it deals with the Umbreon a little bit better, which is a plus because I resist Foul Play. Ice Punch can deal with the Unpheasant and the Vileplume, and potentially Runerigus and Appleton, of course. The Runerigus, it depends if it'll be Yachi or Colbur. I'm not sure. It could also be Kasib, it could be Leftovers. Sort of up in the air for me a little bit. Yachi would kind of make sense with Piloswine on my team too, though, so I'm not entirely sure where that one will go. I'm actually very scared of a Trick Room, like Specs Torkoal and Trick Room with Eruption, and I only just thought of that, so I'm actually going to change Arcanine to Flash Fire instead of Intimidate, despite this being my... No. Oh, no. This is just going to go very poorly. We'll put it that way. It's going to go very poorly if this is Trick Room, Specs, Torkoal. And honestly, if I lose this week, doesn't really matter, because if I lose this week, I'm pretty much done for playoffs anyways. It is only 8 weeks, so I don't really have a shot if I start 0-3. I've had seasons where I've started 2-1 and still not made playoffs because I only win like one game for the rest of them. Some of my opponents in the back half of the season are maybe a little bit easier than what I've played earlier on here, but also they're pretty scary too. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if even if I go 0-8. It's pretty clear to me that free draft is not a strength of mine, and that I work much better with restrictions placed on me in terms of drafting. I just tend to not have a good idea of where I want to go with a draft in free draft, and sometimes I'll try and build like a cohesive team, and others I'll be like, oh well, I'm just going to take the best thing that gets to me. And in this case, I probably shouldn't have taken Aegislash. I think I mentioned that before. I probably shouldn't have taken Aegislash, and I probably should have taken Mew, but I wanted to try out something new. That's really besides the point. Weavile's outspeeding Inteleon, and Flapple's outspeeding Inteleon at +1. That's the whole point of that. Last but not least is Orbeetle. This is actually a really good win con for me, because the Umbreon can't really deal with it very well, and almost nothing gets toxic on this team. Like, almost nothing retained toxic. I think only Vileplume, probably only Vileplume is the mon that would have toxic on this team. So I have to worry about toxic spikes and whatnot from the Runerigus, and I'm not running heavy duty boots because I'm running Leftovers, which I think is important in terms of the recovery game for me here. Otherwise, I'd be running heavy-duty boots, and I just wouldn't care. So the rest of the team needs to support this, and this is absolutely my endgame win con. It's Calm Mind Orbeetle with Dual Stab and Recover. This just obliterates everything once I get... I think once I get 3 boosts, I feel very comfortable that this just wins the game. But even at 1 boost, this is very effective at cleaning up what everything else has done. So very, very pleased with how well this Orbeetle matches up, and hopefully the Unpheasant doesn't come or it can get out of the way because Unpheasant is probably the biggest issue for the build that I'm bringing. And in general, I'm finding that every team has something to deal with Shedinja. The idea behind Shedinja is that it was going to force people to bring coverage for it in some way, shape, or form, but actually every single team for the rest of the season has a fire and a dark type, except for one team that doesn't have a dark and only has a fire. But they also have a very powerful rock type and a very powerful flying type. So I'm probably going to drop Shedinja after this week and try and find something a little bit more useful, because I don't think that Shedinja is going to come to any matches, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think it's going to match up against anybody. Um, so yeah, in terms of what I'm not bringing, Togekiss, T-Tar is a little bit of a problem for it. Besides that, Togekiss looked fine, honestly. Um, it's a little bit difficult with Toxtricity around to position Togekiss well, and I have to run a lot of speed, but Togekiss would have been fine as like a 7th addition to this team, or in fact, instead of the Flapple, Togekiss also probably was fine, but I saw an opening for Flapple to be able to deal with something like Runerigus a little bit better than Togekiss would. Piloswine, also fine. I mean, it's not really going to dent the Appleton as well as Weavile would, and it can't tank the hits from Toxtricity for extended amounts of time. That was the main role I was going to put it in, was especially defensive role against Toxtricity. Not going to do that. Again, it's my only rocker on the team, so it's a little bit dumb on my part, probably, to not be bringing Piloswine. But I've got the Weavile, so sort of a trade-off here. Quillfish, I didn't really think that I would be able to stack hazards on this team, but again, the removal options aren't really there. So Quillfish could have also been okay as a Mimikyu check rather than the Arcanine. I'm not sure what I would have thrown out for Quillfish, but definitely a viable option along with Togekiss. Raichu was also okay as Lightning Rod user against Toxtricity, and that's about it. I don't recall it getting Shadow Ball. Off the top of my head, I cannot remember if it gets Shadow Ball or not for Runerigus, but it's pretty much stopped by Runerigus plus Appleton for sure. It does not have the coverage for those. I know it gets Grass Knot. I'm not sure how much that'll do to Runerigus and T-Tar, but Raichu is just not an effective electric in this matchup. And Shedinja just doesn't have matchups when your opponent has an Umbreon. Look, I know Shedinja should threaten Umbreon in theory, but Foul Play just blows you back, as well as Mimikyu having Shadow Sneak, and it's faster Shadow Sneak, so that's an issue, and then Torkoal. So yeah, Shedinja not coming, and I'm going to look into dropping that. Probably after I play this match, I'll look a little bit more into the logistics of dropping Shedinja and what I would pick up in exchange. If there's another rocker, I might grab that, or I might just try and find something to work with. I might honestly just offer up Aegislash. I know it would leave me without a steel, but it's just such a burden. Having a steel without rocks is just horrible. Just, it doesn't feel good to play with. So I'm going to try and figure out some sort of trades to make maybe my season go a little bit better. Especially if I win this game, I would put a lot more effort into making some trades. But yeah, that's going to be for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you guys for the match.